The following is a reconstruction based on declassified forensic archives for educational purposes only. Do not attempt to replicate any methods shown. This record is as follows. April 1955, West Berlin was the site of a miracle. 6 meters under the frozen German mud, the CIA and MI6 were accessing the literal voice of the Soviet High Command through a 450-meter steel artery. It was called Operation Gold. It was notable, it was audacious, and according to archival records held in the Berlin Stasi Museum, it was a total gift to the KGB. See, while the Western teams were sweating in this tunnel, Soviet counterintelligence reports suggest the KGB was already in the room. There's one thing the intelligence community never told you about this remarkable miscalculation. They weren't the ones listening. They were the ones being played. Until now. To understand this situation, you have to look at Vienna. As documented in official MI6 histories, British intelligence had already pulled off Operation Silver, tapping Soviet lines and securing high-value intel. By '53, CIA Director Allen Dulles wanted to go bigger. He tapped Bill Harvey, the agency's heavy hitter, to monitor a nerve center in Alt-Klinika. Declassified memos from the era state that if the KGB tripped over a shovel, it's not just a blunder, it's a major international incident. The West was hungry for everything. But here's the question historians now pose. Who invited the Soviets to the party before the first brick was laid? Meet George Blake. To MI6 files, he was a high performer. To the KGB's own internal citations, he was their MVP. Blake was in the room for the very first planning sessions. Court records later confirmed he saw the blueprints and coordinates before the first spade hit the dirt. Official records indicate Blake compromised the operation before ground was even broken. The Soviets knew exactly where the teams were digging, and yet, as noted by Cold War scholars, they let them keep going. Historical analysis suggests they allowed the build to protect their star source. Fast forward to the construction, and you'll see just how far the Soviets were willing to go. Construction kicked off in August '54, codename Project PBJOINTLY. Inside, techs worked in blistering 35 degrees heat, a massive boring machine chewing through the sand. They had to hide tons of dirt, so they turned the warehouse into a giant containment zone. Every clink of a wrench felt like a loud crack. They were deep in the red zone, seemingly oblivious to the fact that, as noted in Soviet post-action reports, the KGB was just watching the clock. But then, the taps went live. February '55. Jackpot. 3 major Soviet cables. MI6 specialists moved in for the dry tap, bleeding the signal without triggering a voltage drop. Within weeks, the tapes were rolling, thousands of them. Troop movements, logistics, everything heading straight to Langley and London. The West thought they'd won the Cold War, but in Moscow, the archival record shows they were simply biding their time. And the reason why is still a total enigma.
If the KGB knew, why let the CIA listen? It's the ultimate head-scratcher. CIA damage assessments show the Soviets had a substantial choice: expose the tunnel and lose their key asset, George Blake, or let the Americans listen. According to Soviet state archives, they chose the asset. For 11 months, the Soviets allowed the agency to record a mix of mid-level chatter and logistical data. But was the take worthless or something else entirely? The clock was ticking down to a documented discovery that wasn't random at all. The night of April 21, 1956, a heavy spring rain hits Berlin. Suddenly, a Soviet cable glitches. The official narrative provided by the Kremlin at the time was that a repair crew stumbled onto the tunnel. However, most intelligence analysts now agree the KGB decided the tunnel had outlived its usefulness. 2 a.m.
the Soviets break through the roof. Declassified signal logs show the exact moment the alarm tripped. The opposition is in the tunnel. The operation had been compromised, and Bill Harvey was about to escalate the situation. The scene at the border was a compelling standoff. Soviet troops at one end, CIA teams at the other. According to eyewitness accounts from the 1202 Second Signals Service Unit, Bill Harvey ordered his guys to take up defensive positions with equipment at the American line. He wasn't about to let the Soviet forces march into West Berlin through his own hole. After a tense confrontation, the Soviets pulled back and invited the world press to mock Western provocations, as documented in international news footage from 1956. The agency's work was exposed, but Harvey wasn't backing down. Bill Harvey was a legend who wasn't one for compromise. Even after the tunnel operation ended abruptly, he stayed defiant. Internal agency memos declassified in the 1990s show he initially refused to believe they'd been compromised from the start. He insisted the discovery was a fluke, described by colleagues as a classic case of an officer falling in love with his own op. It would take years before the agency fully realized the extent to which they'd been played. Even with the tunnel sealed, the work didn't stop. The CIA had a mountain of tape, a transcription marathon that lasted into 1958. Declassified reports suggest this intel gave them a blueprint of the Soviet military they couldn't get anywhere else. But here's the detail the public files don't show. How much of it was genuine? Can a compromised operation still be a win? According to subsequent intelligence reviews, the answer came from an asset from the past. 1961. The bubble bursts. According to declassified intelligence briefings, a Polish defector named Mikhail Galeniewski drops a bombshell. There's a high-level mole in British intel. As detailed in the subsequent MI5 investigation, the finger pointed straight at George Blake. When he was identified, the shockwaves hit intelligence circles like a physical blow. Official court transcripts later revealed he'd handed over every detail before the first shovel hit the dirt. The perfect operation had been visible to the Soviets since day one. The agency had been humbled by their own arrogance. But was it a total loss? The files say maybe not. Even after Blake's actions, agency records show Harvey swore the op was a net win. A 1968 CIA internal review argues the Soviets couldn't have effectively fed disinformation across more than 440,000 intercepted calls without disrupting their own real-world logistics. The KGB kept their asset, but the CIA got a massive look at the Soviet playbook. It was a trade of intelligence for exposure. Today, the site is just a quiet patch of woods. The warehouse is gone, but the legacy of Operation Gold is baked into the agency's DNA. As historical analysis by the International Spy Museum concludes, it was a significant lesson. No matter how high-tech your equipment is, one individual on the inside can bypass it all. It was the 450-meter ear that heard everything, but according to historians, struggled to understand the context of its own compromise. But for Bill Harvey, the ghost of the tunnel was just getting started. The tunnel was Harvey's greatest hit and his biggest scar. It is reported that it's still taught at the farm as a warning about operational tunnel vision. The agency spent roughly $6.7 million to listen to the Kremlin, only to find out, as the historical record now confirms, the Kremlin had known about the ear since its inception. This record was classified for decades, and it proves the biggest hurdle wasn't just Moscow, but their own pride. Operation Gold is the essence of the Cold War. Two giants wrestling in the dark, both convinced they're winning. The documents tell us what happened, but the motives? Those are still redacted. If you thought the Berlin Tunnel was wild, wait until we look at the 21,000-meter frontier. A pilot, a specialized piece of equipment, the U-2 Dragon Lady, and a mission that would pressure a president. That story? It's a story for another time.